Otherwise, you can just type it in and it finds it
you should have
much
this.
faster. Choose your department.
Very much, but some. All right, so
Choose
you fold it in
the
in
day.
half, and it doesn't really matter if the
Again, put your name
the words are on the inside or the
in
outside. Fold in half,
the title session.
hamburger style, and decrease it. And then you're going to open it back up.
And go in and give it, you don't have to
fold
give it a
half hot dog
description.
style.
It does help students to decide if they want to take your class or not that day.
Open it back up.
Choose your, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put 20 in here. Put in my room number and hit submit. Now,
then you just take each
when you
side
scroll
and fold
down
it
a little
into the
bit,
center,
you're going to see
like
the,
so.
Notice it says no data to display. If I hit refresh, now
you
I
can
can see the entries that I've made.
That middle crease
and
just to the
so
other
right here I
just
put
that
in
much.
priority
Don't cut the whole
20.
thing in half.
Well, that's a general
On each
session.
side, I'm
It's
sure you've
not
done
a
foldables
priority
similar to
day.
this, like a bazillion
So I need to
times.
go in and hit
Got
the
the
edit
doors.
entry.
It's very similar to what we did the
I'm
other
going to come
day,
down here,
it's not
change
as
it
many
to
doors.
general session,
Go get my
hit
pens.
submit. I can close this. Now when I come back over here and hit the refresh button, and I look again, and now I can see that my general session is correct. Now, for social studies, if you look on Thursday, social studies is Power Prep Day. And right here, I have put in a session for Miss Radcliffe for Power Prep Day. And that needs to be changed. So, or deleted, because she can't have a session on her Power Prep Day. So in order for me to know that that is something that needs to be deleted, what I ask you to do is just go in and type in delete
looks like this.
in the fields.
You're going to write.
And what that will do is alert me that it is a mistake.
Mixed numbers.
And I will go into the spreadsheet and I will delete out that session so that it will not appear in the list.
So
for
issue
students.
number 1 that I found,
and that's how you put in your MavTime sessions and fix any issues that you might have. If you have any questions, please contact me.
A mixed number means it's a whole number and a fraction mixed together. Improper fractions just means that the numerator is bigger. But we should always just have one fraction, no mixed numbers. So if you are dealing with something and you have
I'm going to show you how to install Simple School Contact Tracker and the MavTime front end for doing attendance during MavTime for core teachers. The first thing you need to do is go onto your desktop and delete your current Simple Schools. Just right click delete.
If you did that, not all of you necessarily did that.
Right click delete.
But multiplication and division, no. So
any Simple School or Contact Tracker that you currently have on your desktop.
All right.
Then you're going to go to the S drive. So you would open up a folder, go to the S drive, go to share, staff share, then open the database folder. From here, you are going to drag, if you're a core teacher, you need to get the MavTime attendance front end.
So
and then all teachers get the Simple School 2018.
Add it to the numerator. So that's what they
drag them both
7
over.
times 6, and then you add 5.
You are going to need to enable them if when you open it, it has a yellow bar. So I'm going to open this and show you where the enable will be located.
And
it does take just a minute for it to open.
So I want that as an improper fraction. So I take the 5 and multiply by the 8. What does that give me?
Okay, so right here where it says enable content, you will make sure to click that. You'll do that for both databases. Once that's done, you will not have to do it again until you put a new version of the product on your desktop. If you have any questions, please contact me.
Adding and subtracting. That is what's in there, right? Yeah. Fractions.
In this video, I'm going to show you how to decline or remove items from your inventory.
So before we
what you're going to need to do is log into Lawson. Remember that you have to use Internet Explorer.
So
once you log in, you're going to have your landing page, and you're going to go to Inventory. From here, you're going to see
add or
all the
subtract
inventory
numerators
that
and
is assigned to you.
of the
I only have
fraction.
2 things assigned to me. So
So
now I'm going to
and then
click
you always simplify if needed.
on remove.
So here,
When
to
I
actually
click
do that,
remove,
I decide with my 3 and my 4. I'm not adding those to get 7
my
anymore.
computer needs to
And I'm not
adjust
like
its screen
multiplying straight across.
colors.
You need to
Sorry
decide
about that.
the lowest
When I click
common
remove,
denominator that you can get is 12.
now I can
Which
click
means you actually
on
have to take
decline.
this. One thing it doesn't show you
Here
is how it's
I can
getting
put,
to here.
make
Since
sure
our
that you are
denominators are
putting
4 and
in
3, and 12 is my
left
goal, I have to
in
multiply this one by
room
3
and
over
put the
3,
room
because that is the
number
value
that
of
you
1,
left it
right?
in,
And
and then click
this one by 4
update.
over 4.
It's going to
So
send
4
Aaron a
times 3 is
message
9,
letting
that's where
him
that 9
know,
comes from.
and
4
then
times
he
2 is 8,
will
and you get 12 in the denominator.
change the room number to the new person who has
Here,
it.
you've got
So
5, 6 minus 1
if you
third.
changed rooms and you
So
took
I
something
don't need to change
with
the
you,
6 because my
now
common
you're going to need
denominator can be
to
6.
change the room.
Can I use 18 because that's
To do
easier?
that,
Sure, but
you're going to click on
it's not
change
easier.
room,
So 5/6 can stay.
change the
But in
room
order
number
to get
here,
this at a 6, I got to multiply that by
and
2,
then
which
hit
means that
enter,
has to be the same in the numerator. Then when I
or
subtract, and that gives me
confirm,
3 over 6,
and now you've
then
changed the
you
room.
have to reduce.
If you have any questions, please let me know, or
Everybody good with that? Okay, so here's a little example. Let's do 7/8 minus 5/4. Okay. So what's my common denominator going to be? Okay.
Presenting today, we have Stephanie Kowal, our SCM Practice Manager. Yay. This is her third today. 2 more to go. Going for a record here. And we have Dan Ferruggio, one of RPI's top consultants last year and a veritable expert on MSCM. So very excited to see this. Hope you enjoy it.
But I do need to change
Stephanie and Dan.
I'm going to write it out just because it's not written out in that little example there. And this is going to give me 7/8.
All right, so a little bit about RPI. We were founded in 1999 in Baltimore, Maryland. Currently, right now, we have right around 60 plus consultants nationwide, and our certifications run the gamut of all Lawson and Infor practices.
And then this gives me 7/8.
And we're a fun team that enjoys doing presentations, and apparently we like taking team pictures. So today we're going to talk a little bit about your PAR setup in Lawson, how to manage your PAR levels, and the integration with mobile supply chain management. And then on top of that, some of the reporting functionalities, some custom reports, and then lastly we'll finish up with some best practices.
This is multiplying.
Let's get right into it. So first you really need to set up those PARs, right? So you're starting off in IC81. And something to note is that it automatically creates a IC12 record, which is a little bit interesting, but that's where that information is written to. It also auto-creates the RQ01 record, the rec location, as well as the IC02, the IC location. So really building into your practices that either you build some sort of smart notification to alert the right users to update the remaining records, right? Because RQ01's created, it's not going to automatically default the account unit, then you'll get some failure notifications when you're trying to submit a PAR. So having some sort of process around that is really helpful. And then having some ongoing monitoring and maintenance reports is really, really important. So they're your end users, your customers that are out there creating these PARs, adding sources. It may not be the vendor that you're choosing to order from, right? So they could have fat-fingered, put it in a wrong vendor code, or are choosing to order it from a different vendor that's your prime vendor. So having some sort of maintenance there to look after who you have as the priority one agreement vendor and who they've selected on the PAR replenishment. That's the idea for a report. Also looking over your unit of measure string, making sure the right one's selected there. And then there can be some issues in MSCM, which we'll get into in a little bit. if there is an error for one of the items on your par count, it actually creates a requisition, but it's unreleased in RQ10. So you need some level of management there to either alert the requester so they go into RQ10 and release it and then work on their error separately, or get creative and build a IPA flow that, you know, when this error occurs, automatically go into RQ10, auto-release it, and notify the requester that they need to work on that other issue. And then just a heads up that there can be errors that you'll experience because agreement, a PO25 agreement is unreleased. So, you know, sometimes the system doesn't know where to grab that appropriate price from. So here's just an example of par carts with incorrect vendor codes, so someone can go in and maintain and correct those. And then most importantly, managing your par levels. So it's a lot of information. It can be difficult to just get your hands around it. So I really like to utilize IC03 report groups. So, you know, if you're a department that has, you know, 10 different requesting locations and you're trying to report on all of them and not run all these reports individually, you can really leverage IC03 for that.
And I don't care about these two. These are both
so Lawson offers some canned reports that can be beneficial, but typically you're pulling in information from other reports to bring them all together, right? So here we've provided some Lawson canned reports, and also are just mentioning there's some direct tables here that you can pull information from and you know, build your own reports off of them. So taking some time to invest in building some custom reports using, you know, something like Crystal, where you can have it out on your LBI dashboard. Here's an example of par usage report. So here it's letting the user know whether or not they need to up or down their par, or if everything's good, they don't need to make any changes there. And then here's one that's a little bit more intense that does a similar thing, but it's also taking into account what they actually ordered via handheld and what was done on a manual requisition using RQC or RQ10. So that's a pretty cool idea. And then lastly, you know, typically whoever's maintaining these pars is not maintaining the item information, right? Your MMIS team is making description changes, manufacturer code changes, and that always doesn't end up getting notified to those end users, right? And they have labels to take into account. You know, printed out downtime reports that they may need to update. So here's a Crystal report that we created that looks at whether or not there were any description changes, par level changes, manufacturer information changes, and lets them know whether or not they need to update the label. Also, if the par location has added a new item to their par or removed one, it will let them know, hey, add a label or remove the label from the area. So this is something that could be run at the end of each week and just kind of maintained from there.
Can I get them? Yes. Are you going to make your life more difficult?
All right, so now we're going to start talking a little bit more about the MSCM configuration and what that entails. So the first thing that I recommend is always getting a copy of your MSCM.filter.properties file. That's really the keys to running mobile supply chain management. It has all of your scheduler values, how often MSCM is sending information to Lawson, and how often frequently Lawson is sending that information back. In that same file, there is a Lawson security group that is defined, and that is required for all users that are mobile supply chain users. And they need to be assigned that group in Lawson security, so you could add them to the mobile supply chain portal. And once they're in the portal, then you can start setting them up with mobile supply chain groups, different function access, and all that fun stuff. That's the way I would do it too. With that, there's two levels of administration really. You have the IT information or the administration level, and they're really responsible for setting up that filtered properties file and making sure everything is running smoothly. They help with printer setups a little bit. And then you have your super user or your materials management super user. And typically their responsibilities are updating and maintaining users, locations, labels. So you have those two separate distinct levels of administration and who does what. So your MSCM location access is also independent of your RQO4 access. So within the user setup of mobile supply chain, you have to go in and specifically grant access to each user. So if you click that radio button on the user setup that says location access, you define if they have locations for all locations for a company, specific locations within that company, or if you check global access, that'll give a user all access to all locations and companies, including future additional locations that are eventually added to mobile supply chain. And then some newer functionality that it's existed, but they have made some updates to it. You have the max additional order quantity, so you could set up how many times par you allow a user to order. And that's actually an MSCM rule that you assign to a group, so you could remove or add that functionality based on mobile supply chain groups, and that's just adding additional quantity to this field down below. And then there's also the quantity on order that's in the par configuration screen. You're able to add or see how much of that item is on order. But for that to work, it needs to be a vendor replenished item. So on IC 81.2, those items need to be set up to be replenished from a vendor. Otherwise, you'll see the NA next to it, meaning it's being replenished from your warehouse. There's also some functionality where you could update the par levels from the handheld, and that's relatively new. So if you have that functionality enabled, you can click that little pencil and update the par level, and that will actually update your IC81 record in the par levels. And then there's also, you can flip the flag to show the average par utilization or suggested par level, and that will start updating over time as you order more items. And then the last piece, it's not really a configuration as much as it is an option with the My Par forms. And that's really helpful for organizations that have a ton of pars and each user or par tech is counting a subset of those pars on a daily basis. So when you log into count your par forms, those show up right away on the handheld, and you don't have to go through and click all par forms and select, scroll through hundreds of locations to select. They're already right there grouped for you, and you still have the ability to go back and select additional par forms if you're covering for somebody else.
What we just did was just adding and subtracting.
Labels are always a good conversation to have around mobile supply chain. And there's a lot of different options you could that are available for you with labels. It's not always a one-size-fits-all scenario for your departments or organizations. One department might require certain information, while another doesn't really want to show all the different various options available for those labels. That first label up top is an out-of-the-box mobile supply chain label. And they do give you the ability to loosely customize that label, so you can change around the fields itself on the label. You can't really change what is showing, just the order of the fields in which they show up. The second one down is a custom label created with Crystal Reports. And so you need Crystal Reports and BI or an LBI server. And we just learned that when you're creating these labels, that font, so they use the barcode font is either code 3 of 9 or 128A, and that barcode font needs to be loaded onto the actual BI or LBI server. And
we're not going to think
that
about
would work if your developer is remoting into the server to develop the report, or if they were using it locally on their own computer, they would have to have that font installed on their own computer as well.
N is being divided by 2.
So there's some really good customizations you could do with Crystal reports in terms of labels.
Yeah, I think just kind of talking to that a little bit more, utilizing something like Crystal reports, you can add in some like shapes. So here it's saying that the item's actually below. So it can be helpful depending on what location that you're in. And with Crystal reports, you also can pull in from different tables their information there. So the canned labels through MSCM just allow for like what's it, like 15 fields or something like that. So you may need some more detail there.
So on the left-hand side, I'm left with N.
Can you go back one more?
Sure.
So there's actually other third-party options available for you, and some of them are relatively, and they're fully customizable, so you could download the different tables you want and create your own database within the program. And that's the one on the lower left, so you can fully customize it what you look like. And there's the fourth option you have is you can customize the ZPL, the Zebra printer language, to create more customized labels right from mobile supply chain, and that's the option, the bigger label
we want to think of that
you see on the screen.
The variable is in the denominator like it was in number 1.
All right, so with par counting, there are some common errors that you typically see, and most of them come up when you're first implementing mobile supply chain par counting. The most common one is the unit cost. So if you're adding new items, they're not on a PO25 agreement, or they just haven't been ordered or received yet, you'll get an error message on the upload saying there's an upload error, and that's what Stephanie was saying earlier. It'll create an unreleased requisition on RQ10. So it looks like the count is submitted, but you'll actually have to implement a really good habit of checking this par counting report to make sure that all of your uploads are successful. Another common error is the requester ID error message, and what that simply means is the RQ04 record is not set up properly, or that the user is missing a requester identity on the security side. And one that's also somewhat common if you set your passwords to expire every so many days, and that's if the user they update their password in Lawson and they don't log out of the handheld, and before submitting accounts, you'll see a authentication failed on user, and that just means they have to log out of the handheld and log back in with their new password.
Number 2 had a lot less.
And this is that par counting report. It's under the par and cycle counting drop-down menu, and you go to par counts and click on the reports. And then once you enter your criteria, you'll see the different error messages. You'll say upload error in the status message, and then it'll kind of give you a little bit of a clue as to what it is under the notes section.
I can take the entire proportion and flip it upside down. Okay.
And then there's also some productivity reports that come out of the box with mobile supply chain. And for these to work, you need to have a Crystal Reports application server set up and defined in your mscm.filter.properties file. And the productivity reports and operator activity reports,
I have to pick one.
It's a good way to look into what your par techs are doing, how frequently they're counting pars, the number of units they're counting, and how long it takes them to count items. So it just gives you a little insight onto the efficiency of your team members.
I think there's some of you that would kind of understand that it's the same thing. So this, if I make this B over W10,
so really happy to report that there has been some new added functionality with par counting, and that's for Kanban.
Okay, so now,
this was just added in for the Q3 release. This is just built in MSCM. There's not any kind of data that writes to IC81. For organizations that are utilizing this process, they can build this in to MSCM. So it works on a bin-by-bin basis, and the quantity is equally divided based on the par level and number of bins. So something really cool to
you cannot do this if there's,
to keep in
if
mind
it's
for
not
quarter
an
three.
actual
And here we have a little screenshot of what that actually looks like. And this is on the new Android platform, which is also new.
Okay, it's just a straight up
So
proportion.
pretty cool. It looks
We're all
sharp.
okay with all that? Okay. So let's look then at number 9.
Is that quarter 3? Is that quarter 3 of
number
2017 or
2 different
2016?
ways to do this. We're going to do this the equation
I believe
way
it was 2017. It was mentioned at the Winter Showcase this year.
So it's not. It's coming up.
It's coming up.
Okay, got it.
happening with
Thanks.
K. This 10 is being added to it.
All right.
And then this
So
whole thing is being
some
divided
best
by
practice
6. So I gotta get the
recommendations.
10 away and the 6 away to get K by itself.
You want to start this one
Sure.
off?
So when you're starting your
Can I go ahead and
implementation,
subtract 10 from both
you want to
sides?
define some roles and responsibilities of your users. Who's
Can I
going
get
to be
rid of the
doing
6
what
first?
on the handhelds
Yes, I can get rid
and
of the 6
in
first,
the mobile
which means
supply
I can
chain
multiply
portal
both
itself.
sides by 6.
And then once you have
Here's where
that defined,
you
you
get
want to set up
lost.
various groups
I do not need
which
to distribute
ultimately
the 6 at this
allow that
point
access and that
because this is
functionality
like
to be
6
pushed
over
out to
1,
the
right?
users. So whatever they
You
can
know
do on
how
the
we
handhelds, you want
reduced
them to be able to
before
do that
we
on the
multiplied?
portal, or do you want them to do
This
it
6 is being multiplied by this
specifically on the
whole thing.
handheld and no access to the portal?
I don't need to
So you want to
distribute
define
because
who
this
could
6
do
is
what,
gonna cancel this 6
and then
out.
build
That's
groups
the whole
around
reason
that.
I'm doing it.
Um,
You with me on that?
You want
that
to
leaves
talk
me
about
with
the
K plus
initial
10
setup
on the
with IT.
On the right, that's 6 over 1. Can I reduce
Setting
before I
up that
multiply? Yes.
that filtered
So
properties
what am I
file,
needing both
making
equals
sure
1.
you're having your
3.
schedulers
3 goes
run
into 6
on a
twice,
timely
goes
basis,
into 9
and that they're all running
times.
smoothly.
Then I can multiply
And
straight
then,
across, so that's equal to.
Printer setup is always somewhat
So at this
of
point, I have K plus 10
a challenge.
equals 4/3.
So you want to get that on your
questions
radar
at this
as soon as you start getting things
All right, so
going.
now I need to get
Every
K by
organization
itself.
is
What do I
different,
do now?
whether using printer servers or
Subtract
local
10 from both
printers.
sides, right? So minus
It's always
10,
there's always some
minus
challenges
10,
around that,
and
so that's
we'll
always
write
good
that
to
separate.
start testing that sooner rather than later, or
This is gonna give me
rather than
K
later,
equals 4/3
so you don't run into any
minus
hiccups
10.
around the time of go
Right,
live.
well, I have a fraction minus a whole number. What do I need?
And then really, we talked a lot about labels, making sure that you decide on a solution or multiple solutions. If you have LBI in use, we definitely recommend building a crystal report.
So, do I do anything
But,
with the denominators?
My label designer can also be really helpful if you don't really have someone in-house that can support that. So you just build one list, but you want to allow some custom label. Yes,
I got a couple questions on the labels there.
Sure.
I guess in an earlier slide, it showed that you can print a label
So
from a
that's straight up
handheld,
equation rule.
but I didn't hear you mention it.
I can also do this by proportion rules. Okay?
Yes.
But you can kind of ditch
So
those
there
in
is
every
a
equation, whatever,
in the
it
newer
doesn't matter either
releases.
way. So if
There
I want
is
to use, if I want to
an
do this, I
option
want to
to
cross
print
multiply. Here was
the label
most people's
from the
downfall when they
handheld.
tried to multiply, when they tried to cross
I'm not sure if
multiply
these
When I
screenshots
cross
show it.
multiply, I'm multiplying 2
It
times 8,
might-
so I'm going to write that out as 2 times 8.
I don't want to misspeak
and then I'm going to multiply
on this
10
one, but
times n
I
minus
believe once
7.
you update the par level, you
See how
might
I
be
put
able to
the n
push a
minus
new
7?
label out from that once
See
you
how I put
update
the
the
n
par
minus
level.
7 in parentheses?
So is this
the
going to
10
go
has
off
to be
of the
multiplied by all
user's
of that.
default label
Some people
printer?
just
Right,
do
go
10
back to the
times
reports. I got a
minus
couple
7,
questions I'm catching up
and
here,
you
sorry.
divide by 10
So in the
times
reports, the
7.
question is, can these reports be
I know they're
generated
not parentheses
from
here,
LBI?
but 10 gets multiplied by this whole thing. Just think about this. If this right here was
The
15,
custom
so it's
reports that I was
15
talking about
minus
earlier,
7,
yes,
right?
absolutely.
And
And that's
the
where you'd
denominator would
want
actually
to
be
have them
8.
posted
Just
so you don't
multiply
have
10 times
individual users with a
sense?
crystal license number 1
So now at this
or
point, this gives me 16
even able to modify that
equals-
report themselves.
what do I do
So
with
yes,
10?
we would recommend that they would be posted to LBI, and you certainly could report on those, with something different, not necessarily Crystal if you have another reporting.
So I add that.
I got a couple more here I'm going to hit. Is Kanban only available or anticipated to only be available with Android?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not
So
sure.
then each
Yeah,
cell, right
again,
now
I
I've got
don't want to
86
misspeak on
over
this,
10.
but I believe it's
Can I reduce that?
it's
Yeah,
going to be
they're
an
both even, right?
MSCM
So
update.
what's 86
So
divided by 2?
with that logic, it should be available for
43,
this
and
all
what's
handhelds.
10
all
divided by
handhelds,
2?
right?
And then,
5. Can I reduce it anymore?
so
Nope.
for the, we might not know, but I'm going to ask it, for the handheld label
Okay, everybody
printing,
good
do you
so
know
far?
what version of MSCM
All right.
is
Does
needed?
that help any?
Good question.
Okay.
So we will
there's
look
a lot
that
of
up,
problems
and
left. I didn't
think
even touch the
must have
fraction side
the
over here.
contact
I want
information
you,
right on
we had
there.
about 5
Yes,
minutes
we will
left.
definitely follow
I
up.
want you to work
And
on
the last
something.
one
If
for
you feel
now
like
is,
fractions
do you
are more your
have
issues, then work on
instructions on how to
lots
set up a
of
printer
equals
via the
equals.
MSCM applications for
What you should do and what I
cables?
want you to
I don't
do
know if that
is
means
finish this, okay? And you can check yourself in Schoology.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm following the question on that. I know to set it up in the application itself, the printers need to be set up on the MSCM server first, and then you need to add a host name and a printer name that matches how it's set up on the server.
All right, thanks. We'll take a break and let them ask some questions a little bit later. Thank you.
So last 5 minutes, I want you to work on these.
So getting back to some of the best practices, we talked